Now we're recording it. All right. If you have to talk about how the Industrial Revolution relates and connects to it. You can't just talk about the call of domesticity without saying how the Industrial Revolution changed the roles of families. So you have to explain that, or how the industrial or the transportation revolution and railroads lowered costs that allowed for factories to be created and raw materials to go to market. You have to have that. And so I gave you a benefit of the doubt on this first one if you didn't have that relation. Next one, of course, I'm going to grade harder. And also for a lot of you, I have a W, usually WY, which means a weak thesis. The Y, you don't have anything tied together. A few others, I might have con means context, that background material. I have a lot of these still. That's summarizing what you're going to say in your body paragraphs. No, not for essays in this class, not for essays for the AP test. You have to put down background material. If you're talking about changes to the family, talk about things that led to the Industrial Revolution. Talk about the War of 1812. Talk about starting in Britain. Talk about maybe the transportation revolution. And same thing at the end of the closing. Talk about what it led to. Like, if you're talking about the changes to women, talk about like, this led to the women's rights movement. If it's not going to be your body paragraph. Or talk about capitalism, or even this might have led to the Civil War. And I also was really surprised more people didn't use the changes in religion. I thought that would be a really good one about the family, but it's okay. So let me hand this out. I walk when I grade. You're going to have to deal with the way I write. Sorry. Almost all A's and B's. If you did not, usually the big issue was lower the grade, and this one was not having enough facts, no information. Oh, some of you did talk about the changes in the role of women. And if you didn't mention the call for domesticity, I had to knock you off a lot. Because you knew you were going to write about this. And if you knew that, and you studied before and didn't study that, I don't tell you. So that's just an example of what I had to do. But overall, almost all A's and B's, and I was pretty pleased with that. Yeah.
Just that night. This is so long. Did you really? Tom, did he really? No, Mr. Strong Essay Writer. What does that mean? Strong Essay Writer. Oh, Tom got 1%.
Why just on the ground?
Weak.
Where did
Tom
this
got
go?
1%.
You got 2 out of 6.
You don't know?
That is
Yeah, 2 out of 6.
Is that
How did you get a 2 out of 6? That's not passing the exam. That's because it wasn't very long. It was a very, yeah, it was very. What is the IR? I got an
I don't know, but the
yeah, I'm not also not too body outside of the ratio.
Okay.
I got 6 points. What'd you get?
Huh?
I got a pass.
Industrial Revolution. Everyone, I already did Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution. I'm sorry.
I don't know what that is.
Point off for the complex understanding. Contextual. More fast. Okay. Oh, sorry, I got to. What do you got? 8.
Huh?
Oh, no, that was it. For the 1963. In 1964.
Comment.
PD. How do you get this? Yeah. What is that?
Nothing.
Was that open?
F does not mean you fail. F means finish your argument. Relate to this. For example, more EFs, more facts. My X gets a little bit vague. Mostly just need a few more facts. And you need some context, background. Some were very good. Some were so close. Just a few more things. And here's the deal. The next essay, you have to be conscious of relating your arguments to the topic, to your thesis. This is the Industrial Revolution. It's got to relate to it. It says,
I like that. Not an
oh,
89.
just do it. Next one, do it on.
What is
It's on one sheet.
Oh.
Because all I need is have there.
Oh, that's what about capitalism?
That's the only reason. Yeah, good. That's GD.
There's 2.5.
Hey, I'm standing and walking. Yeah, of course it's a D. Shut your eyes. Shut your eyes. Imagine it being a D. See, and it's a D, right? All right, let's go ahead. I'm not going to talk about this much now. There's a few people out there, so let's go put that away and
There's no influence.
But I set up the
Overall good this morning.
Oh, you're here.
Wait. Getting a 2 out of 6.
Okay, go on.
I got.
What'd you get for points?
Overall good.
Your thesis and opinions.
Oh, that's, all right. If you have any questions, ask me after class. And I will tell you, I will go over a little more detail and show you some examples, but the COP people have not taken it, so I kind of want to do it all together. Friday, we're gonna have a short test. It's gonna be like 10 multiple choice and like 15 matching or 10 matching. The list is already on Teams. It's a pretty short list, so I don't need to make you a paper copy. It's there. It's just gonna be multiple choice and matching. Most will be about Jackson. And so let's go and get to it. Where do we finish it here? Did we get to?
Minority.
Germany's back to
We get here?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, just to review, what law was passed to coerce the tribes, especially the so-called civilized tribes, to sign treaties? To sign treaties and then move those tribes to Indian territory. Yeah, the Indian removal line. Remember, that was to open up land for the common man. There were two big, oh, what? What tribe, nation? Yeah, the Cherokee. They're the last ones to resist. What was the horrific movement? It's not the name of the Cherokees, but for all the tribes. What we call? There are two court cases. Two court cases. What court case said that tribes were domestic dependent nations? Yeah, Cherokee versus Georgia. And what tribe said Cherokee or tribal law was sovereign? What? Worcester versus. What's it? Yeah, Worcester versus Georgia. Worcester. Yeah, it's Worcester. I want to say Worcester too, but it's Worcester. British. Don't blame me, blame the British. All right. So we got to this, nullifying the tariff right. And remember, Calhoun's the vice president. And let's get to what happened here. Oh, so we had this. And I showed you how tariffs work and prices go up. What's that?
Yeah, the road.
You guys don't get it.
What?
You've been mean to me.
No proof. I said that you look.
What day is it today?
Let me go.
All right. It's because you were clearly just being nice to me, saying I look younger than 80. So it is Flamingo Friday, everybody. Drum roll, please. Yes, come on, give it up, give it up, give it up. I know you guys are busy applauding and overcome by Flamingo Friday, but you noticed the fact. Oh,
Wow.
have you guys seen the Garfield? It's all back there. It's 45 years old. How about Scooby Doo? And what does the rug do, by the way? Everybody's tired. I'm gonna take a sec.
It actually.
Yeah, look at this part. This is my favorite part. Yeah, it's vintage. So let's get back to this. So South Bend industry, but remember, it's not the tariff. Underline this part. This is what it's all about. Calhoun's going to spend the rest of his life trying to find that issue. Trying to find that issue to unify the South. To unify the South and protect the minority section from the tyranny of the majority section. And if the federal government, the feds, as I put here, resist, secession. And everybody knows secession is war. So when somebody goes to this extreme, there's a term for it called brinksmanship or going nuclear. And he went nuclear. I got to put something in so I don't forget. He went nuclear. So he escalated it dramatically. That's another one. Hey, you must do what we say or we're going to blow the whole country up. And Calhoun is making this risk when there is no definite sectional crisis at that moment. There was people upset about the tariff. And there was worry too. One thing that was going on with the Industrial Revolution, you're getting textile manufacturing. And nobody wanted to work in these factories. I told you about the Lowell girls. And many people here were desperately trying to buy land in the wild west of Illinois to own their own little piece of land, or for that matter, down here. So there are these pressures going on in society. So let's get back to this. Underlying all of this was tension within the cabinet, and it was dubbed the Eaton malaria. And it was a class issue between the old aristocratic members, or old wealth aristocrats of the cabinet, and people like Jackson, who came from nothing, orphaned like Jackson was, or born dirt poor. Secretary of War John Eaton got married while he was Secretary of War, and he married Peggy Eaton would be his new wife. There's Peggy Eaton on the left. But Peggy Eaton had worked with very poor. These are common. These are not people born of aristocratic lineage. Peggy Eaton worked in a tavern. Does that remind you of somebody else? Rachel Jackson, remember how she was attacked? Now, Washington, D.C. is a really small town. So any social affair, it's got to be, just a little tiny group of people, like all the cabinet members and the wives of the cabinet members would set up social affairs. Well, the wives of the most wealthy ones. Thank you. Reverse the job. So it mustn't be that big a deal. You're right, you need to. All good? Huh? Post house code. Just go do it again in the period. I'm sure it's just pick up something. Or you might be disappeared. I don't know. We came from Chile. Remember we did the presentation on Chile yesterday? Oh no, you were gone for part of that. Okay, so back to this. That reminded Jackson of me, his wife Rachel. And it divided up between those who were more common birth than the aristocrats. And nobody's wife was more open in her disdain for Peggy Eaton than whose wife? The sitting vice president. Steve Calhoun. And his wife, Floride. Yes, his wife's name was Fluoride. No, you. So fluoride is F-L-O-I-D. They soon would call this the petticoat affair. And it was all based upon class. Oh no, did something bad happen? All right. Everybody write down the petticoat affair, and it was all based on class. I got to restart teams. The petticoat affair. You see that picture right there?
Yes.
Imagine that picture. By the way, I'm hungry.
That's for lunch. I'm real hungry.
I mean, I'm always hungry this period, but not like unusually. Who has their lunch or yet? Anybody have lunch? Okay, I'm going to steal it.
Can also mic up and.
Eat the styrofoam.
Yeah. I'm gonna see. It's really just.
Give me a sec. I'm sorry. I have to reboot. I have to restart Teams. It's coming up. Or restart a PowerPoint. They call it petticoat, but it's all class-based. Now, Calhoun joined the New Democratic Party for one reason. He thought Jackson, who was also a plantation owner, would protect slavery, and Jackson didn't like democracy. And it was clear that Jackson did believe in this concept of common man. And it very much infuriated Calhoun, and Jackson hated Calhoun. Always hated, always hated. So look at this picture right here. See the little dance This was done by, okay, now more and more we're calling them Whigs. And the Whig cartoon is showing how decadent and immoral the Jackson presidency is. Here's Peggy, remember, she's in a tavern. I don't know why, I won't say that again, it kind of hurt my throat, but doing this, the facials, immoral dance. Look at this, you can see her ankles.
Oh my gosh.
I should, I gotta get off this, I'm sorry. Okay, that's. No, the point is, that's what they're trying to say, commoners are immoral like that. Which of course is so, so classist and hilarious. Because, think about the decadent slaveholders and what they were doing to their slaves, and we've already talked about that. And they're claiming commoners are immoral. It's amazing to me. So back to this. So 1830, this thing would come up. Now I'm going to go into great detail on it. But there was a debate on the floor of the United States Senate over a bill about Western land. And there was, in addition to it, there's a man named William Foote who added an amendment to stop the sale of cheap Western land. He was trying to keep workers in Connecticut. Remember, I told you a little bit about that. The Foote Amendment. Daniel Webster, Foote was a Whig. Daniel Webster was a Whig. Think about this: pro-industry, pro-capitalism, anti-democracy. There's young Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster is going to be one of the most prominent politicians of this era. Deep, booming voice, so he can speak without amplification. Actually, if you're speaking in front of a group without amplification, high voices travel further. You have to yell more if you have deep voice. Just a little fact. And it's actually really funny, some of the early politicians who turned out to have really high voices because it was better for public speaking. Like Teddy Roosevelt had really high voice, but it was great for public speaking before amplification. Back here. So this trying to stop the sale of cheap land so the workers won't be potential workers and be so desperate. Daniel Webster got up and spoke about this, but he knew the opposition was coming from Westerners and Southerners trying to get allies. And so he turned it into an issue about the tariff and their force. And he finished his speech with one of the most famous lines in American history. Do I have it up here? Liberty and union, now and forever, one and inseparable. We can't have liberty without union. Robert Haynes got up and debated him and gave a speech. There's Haynes right there, of South Carolina. Who else was from South Carolina? Could it be the vice president? Haynes was a protege of Calhoun. Haynes got up and turned it into an issue of, no, liberty is more important than union, and states must preserve their liberty. Soon this will be called states' rights. Now, what do you mean states have states must preserve their liberty and states' rights? He didn't actually mean states' rights. He meant that states can be allowed to have what? Slaves. And all of a sudden, this debate came about slavery, 1830. And so it went very public, this divide. And Calhoun sees an opening. There are Southern Democrats, and there are Southern Whigs. What if you could unify them both against the tariff at this moment? And so they began to debate a new tariff. A new tariff. But while this is going on, the New Democratic Party, the year before, started to have a dinner to kind of all the Democrats in Washington, D.C. Think about it. Some of the members of Congress who are still there. They didn't meet all the time. They met just a few months of the year. They would go back home. Today, technically, they meet most of the time unless they recess. Now, I should add, the House of Representatives has only met 11 times in the last 3 months. So they're not doing anything. You're in the middle of a government shutdown. But back to this. So then people got together for the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, they saw their roots as the philosophy of Thomas Jefferson. And they called it the Jefferson Dinner. And at this dinner, Robert Haynes got up and gave a toast. Okay, you ever seen those long, skinny glasses and they're for champagne? It's called the champagne flute. And they held up and gave about states' rights. Immediately turned it into that. And Calhoun looked at Hayne and said, "You're nothing more. You're nothing more than a puppet for Calhoun, who's his vice president." So Jackson stood up to give a toast. And this is Jackson angry. And it started about the Union and the importance of it. And he finished it by saying, "Our federal Union." And then he found Calhoun, glared, and took a step towards him, and held his glass and said, "It shall be preserved." And then sat there and glared at Calhoun. I gave my right foot. Like that? Pretty good, huh? And he glared at. And everyone knew when Jackson glared at you, that meant something. And like everyone's like, and now Calhoun had a response. Jackson's supporter said he was so nervous, he was shaking so much that champagne was coming out of his glass. Now that's probably not true, but Calhoun had to respond, and he responded with the federal union next to our liberty, the most dear. When he meant liberty, the liberty to do what? To control our moves. And Calhoun, right after this is what we have to get, would resign. He'd be the first vice president in American history to resign. Only one other has resigned. And there was nothing in the Constitution to say, what do you do if a vice president resigns? It's not there. And the 26th Amendment we ratified at the end of the 60s. Now the president can appoint one, confirmed by the Senate. But Frank. And anybody know the other vice president to resign? 1973, Richard Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, would resign. Gerald Ford would be appointed and then confirmed by the Senate. And then Nixon would be the first and only president to resign. So Gerald Ford, who was never elected, would become president for 2 years. We're coming to him and would pardon Nixon for all his crimes. That's another story. Back to this. I have no idea what's going on there. I don't have the remotest clue. I tried. I can't really make out all the words. That's Clay. That's John Tyler. That's Webster. This is Martin Van Buren. That's Calhoun. That's Jackson. They just got a giraffe in New York Zoo at this time. So everybody was talking about giraffes, so they drew him as a giraffe. So, and that leads back to nullification. So, oh, I almost forgot this. Jackson started to surround himself with loyalists. And these loyalists, at first informal, soon to become cabinet members, would be called the kitchen cabinet. And here's mocking them, see him fighting with kitchen utensils and pots and pans. That's Whigs attacking. But the most important of its kitchen cabinet would be Martin Van Buren, who would become his vice president and then become the 8th president. Van Buren knew how to get Jackson as a supporter. Van Buren was poor, started dirt poor, would make himself a leader of the Democratic Party. He was born incredibly poor in this little tiny town outside of Hudson, New York, in Kinderhook County. And he was such a talented politician, they called him the Kinderhook Fox, like the Wiley Fox, or Old Kinderhook. Old Kinderhook. And he knew, like the eating affairs going on, he made sure he always invited the eatings, any social event. And Jackson knew. So Van Buren understood the game. Very talented politician, soon to be president. And back to nullification. Things are going to come to a head. And I was trying to figure out what could represent this impending fight and potential civil war. And it's only one thing. Okay, it doesn't directly affect, but it gives me an opportunity to show this, which I think is really cool. That's a pretty well done implosion, isn't it? That was in a Kennecott copper plant in Utah, and they blew up the smokestacks. That's all right. One more time. I agree. I love this. I think that is so cool. I mean, they timed it perfect, the explosion just right to get play. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. So 1832, 1833, back to the tariff. So in 1832, a new tariff was passed, reducing the tariff of abominations. It was lower, but not low enough for Calhoun. Calhoun was so desperate for the issue that he wasn't willing to accept that as enough of a drop. And so, oh, by the way, Jackson wanted it lower too. He signed the bill, but he wanted Congress to pass a lower one. Remember, Congress writes the law for taxes. That was the whole thing I mentioned yesterday about the Supreme Court. So in 1833, just after the election, Jackson was reelected, but I have to come back to that. South Carolina passed the Ordinance of Nullification, nullifying the tariff. Nullifying. So they will not collect the tariff in Charleston. Charleston's the main harbor of South Carolina. And then Calhoun, thinking, strike while the iron's hot. Let's get the rest of the South to join. This will be the issue, and it'll blow up the Democrats and Whigs and make a Southern party. And he called for, and Southern states seem to agree, for a convention in Nashville, Tennessee, to unify the South, all against the tariff, and so cow Jackson and the federal government that they will give in, and this victory will create the pro-Southern party. So, why Nashville? That's where Jackson was from. So it's going to be a slap in the face to Andrew Jackson. And everybody knew he was threatening war. That's war. Everyone knew it. And so, remember I said he was threatening going nuclear? They just went nuclear. I should add, almost forgot, Calhoun went back home from being vice president, given a hero's welcome in his home of Charleston. Most of the big plantation owners lived in Charleston, and there were plantations were out in the swamps of South Carolina. Very swampy there, lots of diggers. And then the South Carolina, the Assembly sent him back a Senate, holds a meeting. So he's back in DC. Whoa. Now, anybody want to guess Jackson's reaction? To quote Jackson, who was furious at these traitors, said, "By all damnation, I'll hang them all." And Jackson meant it. So he began demanding a law passed by Congress called the Force Bill, where the force of the federal government, meaning, okay, that's a tiny army, but still, as an army and a navy, to enforce federal laws. And who said he would lead the army? Jackson said, "I will lead it. I will lead the army to South Carolina and hang every nullifier." And nullifier to Jackson meant traitor, but nullification. But it also showed Jackson was smart. So he reacted with fury and said, "I will not allow this. This is treason, and the federal union will be conserved." But at the same time, he would use the Navy to stop ships off the shore of Charleston, off harbor, stop them on the high seas, and collect the tariff there. So he didn't put troops in Charleston, which would inflame the situation and also terrify the rest of the Deep South. It was very clever, very clever. And it showed that Jackson was smart. He got it. Despite what the Whigs tried to say he had a temper he couldn't control. Oh, he had a temper. And then behind the scenes, he began to negotiate a compromise tariff that would lower the tariff rates. So this would all isolate South Carolina. And this is a cartoon of South Carolina pulling the Union apart. But I chose this cartoon on purpose because this is actually a cartoon for me. One, South Carolina will be the leader of this fight to find an issue to defend slavery. And here is a Democratic cartoon showing the Union, Imperialist Union, being killed by nullification, South Carolina ordinance, treason, Civil War, deception, disunity, all the way to despotism, meaning the democracy and the republic of killed. Well, Calhoun's like too late. We have our convention, I've won. Overconfident, they turned, I'm gonna say turned it down. Turned it down. No. So Calhoun got his allies in the Senate to stop this bill. But he didn't realize, back in the States, they looked at Jackson and like, oh my God, he means business. Andrew Jackson is not going to allow the Union to fall apart. Do we want civil war for South Carolina? And they all panicked, and the convention fell apart. And Calhoun was the. It worked. It worked perfectly for Jackson. The Union will be saved. Behind the scenes again, Henry Clay would get past a compromise tariff that actually was worse than what the nullifiers wanted. It was worse than what Jackson originally proposed, but it passed. And Calhoun now had to eat crow and agree to that tariff. The funny thing is South Carolina would turn around and nullify the forest bill. Because they wanted to say, oh yeah, we still have power. But no one cared. That's meaningless. South Carolina and the nullifiers were absolutely and totally defeated. But certainly did not end the crisis. What that means is, if nullification is defeated, secession is the next step. So immediately when the next big crisis will come up, they'll threaten secession, not nullification. And when will we see that? Will come 11 years later about this place, this new country called Texas. And then will come later after the Mexican War and the Compromise of 1850, and then come later when Abraham Lincoln is elected president. So, Jackson saved the Union. The Union is saved. Now, music was just becoming a big deal. Like they would put out printed music to old songs, but sheet music will become big business by the end of the century. You know, almost everyone could play, everyone could sing, became big business. Here's nullifier, Jackson and the nullifiers. And so, here's another cartoon. And this is showing Jackson standing down Calhoun. But this is from 1861. But Jackson wasn't president. James Buchanan was president. This is before Lincoln was inaugurated. And here's the Union bowing down to the secessionists, is what we call it, because Jackson was not there. Strong president did not exist. So that is a lesson. Oh, one more thing I forgot to put down. Put down this. Why is this a fight against common man? This is Jackson fighting against the elite who want to overturn the democracy. That's what he saw Calhoun was. A small group of elite who want to govern for themselves and no democracy, no republic. That's what nullification was. Thus, fighting for the common man, but also for the Union. So here's a statue of Jackson in New Orleans. Makes sense. Battle of New Orleans, the big victory for Jackson. And it's right in St. Charles Square. And I'm going to tell you once again, I'm bragging. That picture turned out pretty good, didn't it? Yeah, I like that one. Well, it says on the statue, the Union must and shall be preserved. During the Civil War, the United States took New Orleans. So brought it back into the Union, held it from 1862 to the end of the war. Benjamin Butler, the commanding general of the garrison in New Orleans, southern Louisiana, big victory for the US, had this put into the statue during the war as a slap in the face to the traitors and the secessionists. You have your statue of Andrew Jackson, but the Union must and shall be preserved. That's a paraphrase of his quote from the Jefferson Day. I like that statue. And that once again gets us to the thing about Andrew Jackson. I mean, think about the horrors that made him remove him. And then he saved the country. He's dead. You can go moralize against Andrew Jackson, but it doesn't matter. He's long gone. So it doesn't do a lot of good to say, I always hate Andrew Jackson because of this, because who cares? He's dead. We have to look at the good things he did and bad things he did. And if you're a patriot, he saved the country. But also, I think any removal should be condemned by everyone. It's one of the most heinous acts of American history. In my bias, we can learn from that. There's good and bad from people in the past. If you immediately see one bad thing and decide, you're terrible if you like him because of this, then why learn anything? So let's get to the bank war. The bank war. This is the next big issue of Jackson's fight for the common man. Jackson saw this as this big money elite, a different kind of elite than the plantations, but plantation owners, but he put the big money, new capitalists, and the bank as one form of elite and Calhoun as the other form, against the common man, against democracy. And Andrew Jackson believed that democracy was equal to the economy, even though the term was. This magnet does, I'm going to just move. I like this magnet, but this was a gift from a student, but it looks better here. Hey, we'll get to David Crockett. So, everyone see the bank? That is the Bank of the United States. It's across the street from the White House. Today it's a private bank called the First National Bank. And if you get a chance, go on the inside, it's really cool. And it's marble. Marble is natural insulation, so it's actually really cool in Washington, D.C., which is a very hot city. Anyone ever been to Washington, D.C.? Were you there in the summer? Yeah, when were you there? Oh, so it's pretty cool. Humid though, huh? How old were you? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's cool. And so. Oh, so you're right there in the summer. June's just starting to get hot. The humidity, yeah, you were there?
Yeah, I've been there once to use it. It's pretty.
Rains all the time there, Nate. Humidity, the average humidity in the summer is 1,000%. Okay. If you go there, it feels like it. But if you grow up in Virginia, you're more used to it. When you're in Montana, grow up in Montana, it's so dry here. We live in not quite a desert, but close enough. We live in Helen. Helen is dry. As soon as I'm done with this, you can go. This part. Okay. So everyone look at the back. See the column? See the columns? All right. In let me get done with this 1832. 1832, there was an election. Henry Clay was going to run against Jackson. I forgot to put this down, so put a W next to Clay. I mean, he was the Whig. And the Whigs were brand new. And he was soon to be called not just the Great Compromiser, but Mr. Whig. And Andrew Jackson, the Democrat. Okay, so Clay would pass a bill. It was Clay's bill to recharter the bank. He wanted to make that a campaign issue, and he rechartered it 4 years early to make it an issue in the election. The bank's charter was not due up until 1836, but Clay believed everybody wanted the bank. They should remember how the disaster after the bank, after the bank was not rechartered back in 1812. So even though it's not until 1836, he's doing this. Remember the tariff of abominations to try to box Adams in? He's going to try to box Jackson. So Jackson says he's against the bank, but he thinks Jackson won't be so dumb. We need the bank. So even though Jackson says he's against the bank, he'll sign it. He'll look like a hypocrite, lose support. Or Jackson will veto it, and by vetoing it, from a financial disaster, Jackson will get blamed, lose. That's his strategy. So he's going to box him in or shut him up, or as his cartoon shows, sew his mouth shut. And that's what he's doing there, holding him down. And look at that needle. So that is a brutal cartoon showing that. Here's the thing. It passed the House and the Senate. It had Democrats, many Northern Democrats supported it, but Jackson vetoed. First time the veto was ever used. And Clay thinks, gotcha. Yes. Everybody likes the bank because everyone Clay hangs out with likes the bank. Needless to say, Clay doesn't hang out with most people. And this is the first time a president would use the veto. Jackson vetoed 12 times. And the cry is going to come out. Is Jackson a tyrant, using the veto like a king, or is he a man of the people? So I showed you this cartoon once before, but let me explain it. Here's Jackson standing like a king on the Constitution. And he's holding his scepter and the orb. But the orb is, you see it says veto. And is he King Andrew? Or is he using his power to defend the people? Here, okay, I can't find it. I want to find a better version, but I only have little tiny ones, and I had to expand it. So it got pixelated. But it's Jackson as a big cat defending the public good, like the granary. And so here's the public, here's Jackson. And who's trying to get in? These rats, AKA the Whigs, and that's Webster and that's Clay. And he is killing them. Another brutal cartoon, which is, I should add, so what represents democracy? Cats and cheese. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. I'll show you the cat in a sec. Here's another gruesome one. They started drawing Jackson as a jackass or a donkey, representing he's an unthinking beast of burden of the commoners. And here, the bank issue has killed him, and they are cooking him alive. Clay's about ready to carve him. And with the axe there is Daniel Webster. And this creepy thing is Martin Van Buren. This is brutal. But guess what happened? Didn't work. The election of 1832, Jackson would not only win, he won a big victory, and he said, I'm going to destroy that bank. And his targets, Henry Clay and the head of the bank I've mentioned once before, Nicholas Biddle. You might notice one thing. Big victory for the Democrats. Anti-Masons. That's the anti-Mason party. And they got a state. They got beautiful Vermont. We like Vermont. The royal. Anyone been to Vermont? Yeah, one, two of us. Road trip. Vermont is cool. What time of year for Vermont? Another June trip, same trip? That's a good trip. So, Jackson saw that as an excuse. Get this last part, then go again, okay? Whole government receipt, these are tax revenues and the sale of government land, pull them out of the bank. And government revenues will go into state banks controlled by Democratic loyalists called pet banks. This is blatantly violating the law. So Jackson's going to destroy the bank. And here is Jackson making that proclamation and what we call, remember those terms, executive orders? He issued very few of those. Here's Jackson with the order pulling the money out. And remember the columns of the bank? See them collapse? And Nicholas Biddle, the head of the bank, is running away. But look how they draw Biddle. That's how they drew the devil. Yeah. And they are cheered by the masses. Now, there was even talk of secession because Jackson was violating the law. And he's going to be called what's censored. And censored is formally recognizing malfeasance of an elected official, but not kicking him out of office. And last couple things for today. A bunch of banks in the States now buoyed by these government receipts. And there's no regulation, thus they were called wildcat banks. Begin to make risky loans to take advantage of their new money. And even if they didn't have money, they started making loans of money that they borrowed from other banks that did have money. Why did they make this? Why? Because remember Indian removal and all that land. Land speculation was exploding. People were speculating in land because they thought the value of land would go up. We talked about speculation. I talked about the Ohio River Valley. And this is going to create a land bubble. So it's land, Illinois, a lot of Illinois. But don't forget also in the Southwest with Indian removal. all that land open up and it's gonna be scooped up by speculators. Because the assumption is if they buy it now, the value of the land will go up, and what's gonna happen to the value of land? It's gonna go up and up and up. And pretty soon, everybody believes that you're a sucker if you don't buy this land. The value is gonna go up and up and up. And every time there's a bubble, there's a kind of euphoria where people believe, not everybody, but almost everybody, it's gonna keep going up and up and we're all gonna get rich. Buy. If the price goes down a little bit, buy some more because it's gonna go back up. It can never go down again. Everything is different. We're gonna get rich. Guess what's gonna happen? All bubbles burst. And then what are people gonna believe in the next bubble? It'll go on forever. Every bubble. Wonder what it's like to live in a bubble today. Hey, you're lucky. You live in a bubble today. Generative AI. And people are investing like mad. And what's happening right now? Woo! Wow. Estimates as high as $1 trillion in paper value have been lost in the last 3 days. I don't know if it's going to lead to a financial panic, but this is. It could. We are in scary times. And what's Biddle's response? We will finish this on Monday. Sound good? What's that? Oh, I can have it?
Yes.
How about we save it now on my phone? All righty then.